Good evening. It's time for 30 Minutes. I'm Rebecca Anderson, and these are my special guests. We're having them back for the second week in a row, Jay and Winona Helmsley Billionaire. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. It's great to be back, Rebecca. That's great.
It's always wonderful to have you. You guys are so interesting. Police brutality. We said we were going to be talking about civil rights issues this week. Police brutality is becoming a very serious issue in the U.S. The police killings of unarmed black men, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and the lack of legal accountability for the police officers in those cases and others is generating a ferocious backlash. A major anti-police brutality movement, often referred to as the Black Lives Matter movement, is rapidly growing, holding demonstrations, including sit-ins throughout the United States, demanding an end to police brutality, police militarization, and the lack of legal accountability police officers face in most police brutality cases. Now, Black Lives Matter in Minneapolis closed a section of 35W and held a major demonstration in the Mall of America. And other actions took place during Martin Luther King Jr. Day. What is your impression of the Black Lives Matter movement?
I must tell you, Rebecca, it's impressive. I mean, this movement has gone from basically not anywhere. I mean, to all of a sudden, it's huge. Millions of people are marching. I mean, and like you said, I mean, they closed down Interstate 35, which is something that's not happened since the Vietnam War. You're covering a lot of history. That's 40 plus years of history right there. And the huge demonstration you referenced at the Mall of America. You know, most movements really start off very slowly, you know, they kind of grow almost imperceptibly. This one is lit up like a ball of fire. And it's not showing any signs of slowing down anytime soon. So it's really amazing how quickly this has grown, especially when you consider so many people today, especially the young people, are cynical and depressed, and they don't believe that any protest or any activism, nothing they can do will possibly make a difference. We're not seeing that. Because it's not just movement veterans who are in this, it's a lot of young people. Young people are leading the charge in this movement. In fact, they're not afraid to challenge their elders when they feel like it. So, and that's another thing I respect. And the thing is, I think why this movement has all of a sudden came about is, like you mentioned in your introduction, there's been so much police brutality, such a lack of accountability. You know, unarmed people, disproportionately black men being killed by the police and beaten by the police. No accountability. Very few people are being tried and convicted and sent to prison. You know, these police officers who commit these abuses. And it's gotten to the point where I think people are saying, enough. This has to change. You know?
Yes, and it's interesting hearing that from the conservative side of the aisle.
They bring up a lot of good issues.
Yes, they do. How about you, Winona? How are you seeing this?
Well, I have to say that I believe that Darren Wilson and Daniel Penatello were just doing their jobs. You know, we're almost at a stage in this country where we're paralyzing our police so that they can't do their job. And we have liberal hucksters out there like Al Sharpton that gets on TV to spew his nonsense and change the media's focus. You know, we have to stand behind our police force.
But you know, dear, I agree with you. Al Sharpton's a huckster, a charlatan, and but he wouldn't be able to do this if there weren't some real grievances out there. I mean, you know, that's why, you know, this movement exists. There are real grievances and real, you know, anger about what's going on. You know, the police force is just out of control.
Clearly you have differing views on this. Can you explain this stark difference of opinion?
Well, you know, we've discussed this before on 30 Minutes. I'm a staunch civil libertarian. Have been since I was a young man. That's something that never changed. Even as I made the transition from being a liberal to a conservative, I've always believed very strongly in respecting civil liberties, respecting due process rights. And that's where I come from. I believe the police should be peace officers. They should respect the law that they're asked to enforce. That's their job, to enforce the law and respect that same law. I cannot stand police officers who discriminate, police officers who are corrupt, police officers who use excessive force, who kill people without justification. They are worse than criminals. And I believe a lot of this abuse would come to an end if these police officers who committed these crimes, because that's what they are, crimes, we're held legally accountable. And you know what? And I've heard other people say it too. If a police officer breaks a law, he or she, when practicable, should receive twice the sentence of a civilian.
Mm.
Yeah. You know, that would put a stop to a lot of this.
Winona, it's your turn. What have you got?
The ruckus that the media has made and blown all of this out of proportion is just, it's really rather astounding. And I'd have to disagree with you that, you know, I was raised in a home where law and order was important. And even though there may be occasional mishaps within the police departments, I don't believe for 1 minute that our police aren't standing up for justice and doing the right thing. I mean, they have a hard job, and they get a bad rap in the public, and, you know, really all they're doing is just making sure that hoodlums like Michael Brown get the correct rap that they get.
Well, Winona, I have to challenge some of that. You're talking as if this was all just a tragic accident. And I don't think that, well, let's look at the video. Eric Garner is on video saying, I can't breathe, while a police officer has him in a chokehold that he doesn't let up on. And there were a number of other officers there who didn't step in and try to stop this officer from killing Eric Garner, as it turned out, but they didn't try to revive Garner when he was finally passed out. Most of the witnesses to Michael Brown's death say that he had his hands in the air, or some say that he had his hands at his sides, and he didn't threaten Officer Wilson. So how do you stand by your statement then?
Well, if he'd just listened to the police officers, I mean, they were telling him to stand down, to just hold still, and he kept struggling, and if he had just listened to them, I don't believe for a minute that their intent was to kill him. He just wasn't listening, and this happens so often. And you know, we have criminals, even though they're petty criminals. I mean, Michael Brown was doing something illegal. He had been stealing cigarettes and then, and then reselling them against the law.
Yes.
But dear, he shouldn't have been shot. I mean, everything I've seen indicates that he didn't hurt Officer Wilson, that there wasn't, you know, you look at the photographs, and there weren't any bruises or cuts, black and blue marks, scratches, anything that would indicate there had been a fight. I mean, Officer Wilson's story, you know, that Brown assaulted him, kept beating on him, you know, until Officer Wilson shot him, it's hard to believe. It really is. You know, it defies logic, quite frankly.
Yes, it does. Black Lives Matter activists and many other people criticize the St. Louis County, Missouri, and Staten Island, New York grand juries for not indicting Darren Wilson or Officer Pantaleo. And critics contend the grand jury process is deeply flawed. And I don't know if we've ever seen before, as clearly as now, that something needs to change. Local prosecutors who work with the police on a daily basis, bring evidence to grand juries to make a decision, and about indicting police officers accused of police brutality. It's all a very closed and incestuous system. Critics argue many local prosecutors present evidence in the accused police officer's favor before the grand juries, thereby significantly decreasing the likelihood of a grand jury indictment. Do you two believe, or does either of you believe, the current grand jury system is, as applied to police officers accused of misconduct is flawed? And if so, what reforms would you recommend?
Well, before I address that, I just have to say something real quick about Eric Garner. I mean, I feel bad for both him, Michael Brown, for all the other people, but especially Mr. Garner. What was he doing? He was just selling cigarettes, loose cigarettes. I mean, a petty crime, if ever there was one. Maybe it shouldn't even be a crime. I mean, he was an aspiring businessman. You know, I mean, really. Give him a ticket and let it be done with. If you have to do anything, don't the New York police have better things on their hands? You know, aren't there some real serious crimes going on in New York City? I think so.
You would think so.
And, you know, to choke the man to death, absolutely uncalled for. I mean, it was a chokehold that violates New York City's own police department policy. So, no, there was absolutely no justification for that. And like we said before with Michael Brown, we may never know. We don't have the video footage of exactly what happened that day, but I still find Officer Wilson's story hard to believe. And you, like you said, you have all these eyewitness accounts saying he had his hands in the air or by his side. So there's just something not right about that either. But getting back to the grand jury question, yeah, there's obviously, like you said, incestuous is a good word. this is a problem when you have local prosecutors prosecuting local police officers. They work with these police officers on a daily basis. They know them, many of them on a first-name basis. You know, there's a clear conflict of interest. I'm surprised there haven't been laws about this subject before. You know, it's just biased. And is it any